How is everything?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you do, brother? How's your
Yeah,
health?
yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm doing good, man.
Yeah, long
Just
time.
a long time. It's been a few months, bro. Just been moving areas and trying to adjust to the new changes in my personal life. So, oh, good, bro.
Yeah, oh
You
yeah.
just,
How's the move going? How's the move?
alhamdulillah, it's good, man. That's good, bro.
Where are you now?
Cambridge.
Oh, okay. I've never been to Cambridge, and not gonna lie, that's it. I've always wanted to visit, so I'll take you up.
Welcome
I'm
anytime.
free.
Say
Yeah,
again?
when I'm free, I'll come down.
Yeah, definitely, man. Inshallah, why not? Where are
So
you right? You're at home.
yeah, I'm at home right now. I had a night off, so just chilling in it.
Say, yeah, good. You ready for Ramadan?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I need a cleanse, man. Fasting cleanses the body, so I'm ready for it. I need it.
Yeah, bro. Sometimes we need that mental cleanse more than the physical. But that's just me personally.
Ramadan does both.
Hmm.
Ramadan does both.
So, did you manage to go over the stuff I sent you?
So I said I did check out what I could, right? Because I was a bit busy, right? But I
Right.
managed to check out what I could, and I picked up some. I did manage to pick up some material, right? Right for this for this podcast. So 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 no so no, enjoy it. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I heard I heard I heard a few things about it, but I haven't had the time to research because of work. But I did check out some of the stuff you sent me, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's quite a few different nations and quite a few different groups that are warring with each other, right? In that around that in that region, but just around those borders. And you know what? Guaranteed, we both know who's actually behind it. They're all fighting each other, but we all know who's right, who's funding, who's pulling the strings behind them. Because the same story everywhere. Like what's going on in Africa, in that part of the world, is the same thing that's happening in South America. The same thing that's happening in Asia, with Pakistan and India, with what happened with Pakistan and Bangladesh. There's always, right? We always know who's behind it. Unfortunately, it's right politically on a political level, it's always the West that are behind everything.
Yeah, bro. It's obviously I'm going to speak in code words. So it's always the tiny hat, blue and white people behind everything. And wherever they go, they cause destruction, whether it's on land, on the sea. And the reason I wanted to specifically speak about Congo is, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it's not mentioned enough in not only Muslim spheres, as far as my experience goes, but also we are not taught in school about this at all. The
Yes,
the fact that I've learned a lot of history from you as well over the years when we speak.
exactly.
Of Afwan, I've never come across, excuse me, such information, and it's important to understand that with each atrocity, or as the phrase goes, crimes against humanity, which originated from Congo during this period of colonialism when the Belgians went there. In fact, the European colonial powers in the 18th century had a conference, bro, and Leopold was like, I would like Congo. They were like, yep, cool, take it. And that's reason number one, the fact that it's not known. Number two is I see the same parallels about 200 or so years later on in our lifetime with Gaza, the way
Yes.
the way Donald Trump, obviously he's the puppet, but again the blue and white tiny hat people are making him say things like, well, we don't have to buy anything, we will just take it and control it and transform it. They're talking about a Rivera, talking about hotels, smart cities, so on and so forth. And it's so off the cuff, so casual, because they've dehumanized Falastinis the same way they dehumanized the Congolese, they dehumanized our ancestors. And this pattern of dehumanization is also mentioned in the Quran. And reading about Congo recently more in terms of what's happening over the past, let's say, 2 years, and reading the Quran and how different parables, different stories of prophets and messengers have unique approaches in their respective times of crisis. So, for example, when Isa alayhi salam was being ridiculed by, again, the, let's say, tiny hat, big nosed people of his time, and they colluded with the Romans. And we don't believe, obviously, he passed away, he was raised up to heaven. But the fact that they had the intention of injuring one of their own and they slandered his mother, as the Quran reports, and then we see that crisis, that knowledge that Allah is informing us of how to deal with such situations. We see a parallel in, for example, Ayub alayhi salam, Prophet Job, during his trial at the individual level, where he was one of the wealthiest men at the time, God fearing, and he lost everything. He was patient, and then he got everything back. And I think that's where I've personally struggled as well, bro, especially since October of 2023. Alhamdulillah, not complaining here, but it's so surreal, bros, when you open your phone, irrespective of what app or what language those videos come in, because sometimes you have videos posted by Turkish news channels and they have the
Yes.
subtitles and everything. But it's the same location, it's the same information they're giving us, and it's the same crises. Now the question is, what type of questions do we have to ask? And I asked myself two questions, bro, and this is where over the past few days, of course, with help from my family and my wife and everyone else, I thought, you know what? The war that I can contribute to the most is the intellectual war. So, what can I do at the individual level? That's question one. And then question two was, what can I do at the collective level? And that is yet to be, I wouldn't say concluded, but yet to be sketched out, because collective implies your local town, your local mosques, friends, family, so on and so forth. So that's what Islam is about. I agree with the sentiment, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this sentiment. Some people say, well, Islam is not a religion, it's a system of life, because it's not only personal to the individual, like how Christians, for example, would say it's the salvation in Christ we seek. It doesn't matter if you've done all of this craziness or a portion of it, you'll be saved. We don't believe that. We believe every soul is accountable for their actions. I'm not responsible for my parents, and my children are responsible for me. At the end of the day, when we're 6 foot or so under the ground, we will be questioned at an individual level. But the collective action justifies how we are as an individual. So, in my recent video, and this is the last thing I'll say, which is the reason I wanted to connect Islam and neuroscience, because I knew that, okay, these are two areas that I need to be an expert in. Islam, as the hadith says, it's incumbent upon every Muslim man and woman to learn the deen as much as they possibly can. Everyone is different. For example, in my case, my Arabic grammar and linguistic knowledge is weak. But my tajweed is good. I can pick up the general overall meaning of an ayah if it's related to, let's say, heaven and hell, if it's a story, if it's something regarding ahkam, like a ruling or so on. But I want to know each alphabet. I want to know each kathra, dhamma, shad, how they operate, and so on and so forth. So, inshallah, that's an area I'm improving on. And then neuroscience is because I've been studying it deeply for about six. Well, I started reading about it 6 years ago, but I went heavy into it 4 years ago, and I just could not believe what I was reading because the more you read about biology, right? So someone from the medical field like myself, and you as well, to an extent, when you look at people's behavior, workplace, how the brain works, how the blood operates, and so on, you're like, there's definitely Allah. Not that I doubted in the first place, but the shaitan tries and finds that gap and then stretches that gap as big as this room, and then it just gets bigger and bigger through music, through movies, through women, through fame, money, so on. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think Islam is a system of life, or is it just a religion? I do my thing, you do your thing, and don't get involved too much.
No, no, no. So what is Islam encompasses all aspects of reality, whatever system of rights, whether it's individual, whether it's collective, whether it's society, whether it's a family, right? Islam encompasses everything. It encompasses all forms of knowledge, all forms of practical knowledge that you can think of, whether it's economics, whether it's science, whether it's technology, whether it's engineering. So the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, it applies to everything. Like Islam says, seek knowledge from everywhere. Whatever is beneficial, right? Use it, right? Which is where that hadith comes from. Seek knowledge, even if I have to go all the way to China. And there's Sahaba that's buried in China as well. Now here's the thing. Islam encompasses like I'm not sure how you view. I'm not sure your views on Dr. Allama Iqbal. Uh, but there's a analysis, right, of his works that I'm reading, and in the analysis he mentions three different forms of or three different mentalities when it comes to religion. For example, so there's somatotonic, there's cerebrotonic, and there's viscerotonic.
Sorry, bro.
So
Might just repeating that. I just want to take a note.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem.
Can you say the
So
repeat? Sorry.
this is a review of this author here. I can't remember his name. But he mentions three different types of temperament when it comes to religion. So every single religion on the planet falls into one of these three categories. So one is cerebrotonic, right? Cerebrotonic is all to do with just yourself. It's more to do with, like, meditation is simply like your own journey, and that's pretty much it. You don't force it on anyone uh, or anything like that. Then there's viscerotonic, which is all about like more to do with the society, institutions. So, for example, you have mosque people go out and there might be certain special days, like for example Eid, for example Christmas, even though that's a pagan holiday, that's got nothing to do with Christianity, right?
Hmm.
There's even a verse in the Bible which talks about this specific celebration, and it mentions that this is what the pagans do, and yet all the Christians are doing it now, and some
Yeah.
Muslims, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
crazy.
so
I know.
this is more the society, this is more the social structure, this is more like the social life of it. That's viscerotonic. The third one is somatotonic. Now, somatotonic is described as a bit more of the aggressive or physical or outward, right? So where you go out and, for example, convert people, or you have a military. Now, Islam is all three of these things.
Hmm.
Islam is all three of these things. So it combines a cerebrotonic, because there is a path, like you mentioned, that it's all about, right? It's not all about, but at the end of the day, like we're going to our own graves, we're responsible for our own lives. Yeah, that's true, right? So there are some things. So ultimately, it is down to you, right? But at the same time, there's a viscerotonic, there's the societal aspect of it, there's even the somatotonic, there's the physical side to it as well. There's right? So these are three. So whichever category, whichever way you look at look at it, or even if you look at, for example, the debate between science and religion,
Mm.
that doesn't apply to Islam, not even historically, not contextually, not according to the Quranic verses or the Hadith, and not according to the history of Islam either, because Islamically it commands, it's incumbent on every male and female to go out and seek knowledge, right? And according to the Hadith, says seek knowledge even if you have to go all the way to China,
Mm.
right? But also even historically, the Islamic Golden Age, we had we had very intelligent, very dedicated scientists, scientists, right, philosophers. We had very intelligent mathematicians. We had very intelligent physicians, right? Very very intelligent, like very intelligent people, like uh very important, very essential people. And majority of these scholars, they were polymaths, right? They were polymaths, so they study multiple subjects, and
Mhm.
learning never stopped. So learning is not like how it is now, where it's like a bachelor degree, it's a master's, or even a PhD. It was a lifetime journey, right? Lifetime journey. So, and even when it comes to debate between science and religion in Islam, both those things are compatible. And what is its right? It's like Einstein says, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. But
Mm.
Islam does not make that separation. Seek knowledge is a part of it. If you like, like, if you introduce something in Islam, something practical, you get the reward. You get the reward of that. You get the reward of that. This is Islam. Islam is all about knowledge and its applications, and about bettering society. Uh, One second, even social systems, like for example with the Ottoman Empire, they had
Mm.
universities, people study from coming from all over to study. They had they had a system set up where you could apply for free meals. They had a common hall for the students, right? So these were quite like advanced systems. They weren't all invented by the West. A lot of these things were actually borrowed, but actually learned by the West, and then they learned
Correct.
the knowledge and then tried destroying the societies. So Islam, even the contradictions that you find in the Western world with science and religion, like many of these contradictions, Islam solves them in very simple ways, and in ways that, like, the Westerners can be dumbfounded by or shocked by, or they just find it unbelievable. Right? Islam is a complete system. There's right. So you're not wrong with saying ultimately you're responsible for yourself. That's also a truth. But there's also this other truth that yes, there's a societal aspect, right? And there's a smartatonic aspect where you have to go out and you have to spread knowledge. You have to speak the truth. You have to set an example. You have to right. These things are important as well. I do like what I do like what you said about. I like how you combined, for example, your passion for neuroscience with Islam, because neuroscience is also a branch of knowledge, right? It's a very important branch of knowledge. And right, whatever field you're in, whether it's your passion or right, or is something that's that you have that you're very good at, yes, you have to connect to Islam. Islam has to play a part in that.
Mhm.
It's like and this ties into the geopolitical aspect, or uh the wider issues that surrounding the Muslim world, like with Gaza, with Palestine. So with Pakistan, with Pakistan, with Imran Khan, with Afia Sadiq. Not many people talk about Afia Sadiq, right?
Yeah.
Some people are, but as a collective, it's not very well circulating within the wider Islamic community, or even outside the Islamic community. With there's not many activists or people that fight for humanitarian causes that are talking about Afia Sadiq. There's so many things that there's so many issues going on with the wider Islamic world, like which, and I'll say it this way, and this is not me attacking uh the Muslim world. This isn't me saying, because people can, when you say harsh truths, people can take it the wrong way, but these harsh truths are needed to be communicated, to be said, to be understood, so we can solve these because they are very important. They are very pertinent. For example, how is it that Iraq is destroyed? How is it that there's all this instability in Pakistan and Iran? How is it that Libya is destroyed? How is it that Palestine is in the situation it is? How is that Burma's going through these troubles? How is it so many of these Muslim countries going through these troubles? Um, uh, and one of the reasons why, and this goes back to a few hundred years ago, which is also the colonial period, is because that's the cause of it when we started dividing ourselves. Islam
Mm.
tells us to stay united. Islam tells us, okay, so I'm paraphrasing a bit, right? But it tells us not to get too comfortable. It tells us to stay sharp, to stay ready. It tells us not to become too materialist, not to become too attached, right? We start going into materialism. And one thing about so obviously we had this conversation outside which we don't really get to finish, and we do disagree, but we're not going to have this debate here because that's not the point of the topic. But we had a we had to talk about Sufism, right? I know where the Sufis, right? So one area where the Sufis started getting really misguided, especially in the last few centuries, is when they went too much into philosophy and poetry and this and that, and but then they forgot they started to forget the physical aspects, right? The physical aspects. The physical aspects are meant to be in balance with every single aspect of Islam is meant to be in balance, right? For example, just like the three temperaments that I mentioned earlier, the cerebrotonic, the viscerotonic, and the somatotonic. All three temperaments are meant to be in balance, right? So everything. So during the last few centuries, which was also the colonial period, we started dividing ourselves. We started becoming lax. We started becoming lazy, right? And that's where the Europeans had the edge. But also, you'll find with the Europeans that okay, yeah, there's some difference. Like you talk to an English guy about the French, he'll tell you everything he hates about them. You you ask him about the Germans, he'll tell you everything he hates about them. Even the British and the Americans, you ask them everything like what they think of the Americans, they'll tell you everything they hate. But
Mm.
when it comes to actual economics, when it comes to actual trade, they're always in unison. When it comes to joint decisions, they're always in unison. Look at what's going on in Ukraine; they're all in unison.
Yeah.
So that's one contradiction, and it's because of that contradiction. So even though they were very barbaric, and they didn't just do, and it's not just a Muslim world, right? Because this ties into the topic as well. South America was like this as well.
Mm.
Africa was also like this, very divided, very they were fighting over things that didn't matter. Same thing with India, with the Hindus, Muslims, and the Sikhs. They were all fighting. All the Europeans did, they just came and go, oh wait a second, right? Excuse my language, but we can shit stir here. We can shit stir here so much. Just stir things, let them fight amongst themselves. We run off with all the resources, and that's exactly what they did, right? And then when they made enough resources, they fought with us. They destroyed us. They used us against each other as well in the war. They ran off with our resources. They destroyed our institutions of knowledge, right? Everything like that can lead to that is a side that's incumbent for the progress of society. They destroyed everything, right? And then as a result, we've been quite flooded. Like the pretty much the only major source of knowledge were Western institutions when it came to psychology, when it came to philosophy, even when it came to religion. Like there wasn't a strong because of lack of institutions, there wasn't a strong counterforce to that, right? So it's because of these things, right? And it's almost like when we're at the UN, we're almost begging now. Like when it comes to human rights issues in the Muslim world, in Africa, in South America, it's almost like we're begging, right? That's not the position we're meant to be in. That's not the position any person is meant to be in, especially when he's speaking for his own people. He's meant to be solid. He's meant to be brave, right? He's right, like how Dhulfikar Ali Bhutto was. He told the UN to their face. There's a video on TikTok on this, where he said right in front of everyone in the UN. He goes, "You're just a fashion show." We need people like that. We need people like that are brave, that are fearless, that are strong, that are knowledgeable, that have their heart set in the right place, right? We need people. We need people like that. And and the reason that power has been given to the Western world, because obviously nothing happens without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's direction or command or say so, or uh what's the word, when you want something and the person that's whose decision it ultimately rests on just allows it. I'm not sure what the word is, but ultimately it's all down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it says in the Quran that I will give power to a disbelieving nation that's righteous over a believing nation that's corrupt, right?
Surah Muhammad, yeah.
So, sorry, which surah was it?
Surah Muhammad.
Surah Muhammad. Sorry. Yes. So so this is so this is what's happened with the Western world. And if you look at the justice that's within the Western countries, you look at the law, you look at the economics, it's fair. Like, even if someone cheats you, there's court systems that will put things in place. There's a law that will put things in place, right? And there's laws to prevent you from getting cheated, right? Obviously, they're doing things outside of their country, right? But that's a contradiction, right? But that's a country that's because of that contradiction, because of that issue with the Muslim world and with other countries as well, including Africa, right, including Congo. This is why uh it's allowed for it was allowed for these Western powers to do that. Now, when we solve this contradiction, right, the Western powers will collapse. Now, back to the topic with Congo and any non-Muslims, any people from Africa, any non-Muslims that see this, please do not take my words the wrong way. Because I'm talking to our people, I'm talking to Muslims, I'm talking to Pakistanis, Indians, Bengalis, I'm talking to everyone, right? I'm talking to everyone. Now, with now now how all this relates back to the topic of the video is I did look at some of the material that you sent me, and yeah, there's a lot of division. It's like there's Rwanda, there's uh there's Uganda,
Hmm.
and there's another country that was mentioned as well. I can't remember it off the top of my head,
I think
but
Chad.
right, I don't Chad wasn't mentioned in the article, but it probably is. There's probably a few more countries. They're all involved in it. They all have their soldiers parked at the border. They're all warring with Congo. They're all warring with Congo, right? And there's quite a few different groups. Like there's a Mission 32 or M32,
M30, yeah.
who are largely from the Tutsi tribe,
Hmm.
and and there's a whole load of stuff going on there. There's a whole load little groups like this that are warring with the Congo. Right, so there's internal conflict as well, and I didn't know a bit about Congo beforehand, like before we started speaking on this topic. One thing with the Congo is very, very rich in resources, crazily rich. Like, for example, Congo has 1/3 of the world's diamond reserves. 1/3 of the world's diamond reserves.
And guess who owns and manages most of those mines?
Who?
Tiny
Oh yeah,
hat, blue and
huh?
white people. Tiny hat, blue
Yeah,
and white people.
doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. It's obvious.
It's absolutely
Even if you don't know, you know. Even if you don't know, you know,
follow the
right?
money.
Exactly. But what's it, right? 1/3 was diamond reserves, right? Something like, I think 1/3 or 50% of the world's cobalt reserves,
Mm.
right? 70% of the world's coltan, which they use in making, which is essential in mobile phone production.
Yeah.
Right? And that's crazy. With that amount of coltan, they could set up their own mobile phone industry. They could supply the whole world. They could supply all of Africa. They could supply the whole world. They
They could.
become a center of trade, right? A
Mm.
center of production for mobile phones. Crazy how much potential that is. And right, so when I look at stuff like that, and also other things like rubber, tin,
Yeah.
copper, right,
Yeah.
loads of things. Those are just the three massive ones that I mentioned, like 30%, 30%, and 70%. Crazy. And so it's obvious what's going on behind the scenes, why all these little groups and all these countries are warring with Congo, and it's and obviously they're not making the at the core of it, they're not making the decision by themselves. They're obviously, like puppets on string. They're being played with to attack Congo for obvious reasons, right? Right, for obvious reasons. Uh, so some people just want to keep hold of those resources, right? There's people that are like viruses, they're global virus, and they're holding on to these mines and reserves, and they want to keep it, and they don't want the people to even begin to realize that, oh look, these are like, if we can make use of these reserves, we can supply ourselves, but we can supply each other as well. We can trade with each other. We can become a powerhouse. Or they didn't want people to even. They don't even want that thought to enter into their heads. So it's we already know what's going on. So the same issue that's there, and it's an issue that should be talked about, and it's an issue that should be mainstream. Everyone should know about this. But it's the same, right? But it's the same situation there that is with the Muslim world, that is with South America. Everyone's divided. Everyone's fighting each other. Like look at Afghanistan and Pakistan. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Pakistan and India. Look at Pakistan and Bangladesh. Uh,
Iran.
exactly. Look at, I think is it Tajik? I think Tajikistan and Afghans. I think there's some issue there as well. It's great. Like it's the same system everywhere. It's the same system everywhere, and we all need to wake up. Um, which you know what? I think you already know this, but I went to China in December. Do you know about that?
You
Yeah,
share what?
yeah, you know about that.
Hmm.
Here's the thing, like there's a lot of propaganda about China, and I'm telling you right now, it's all BS, or at least 90% BS.
Well,
I've
like they
been
should
there.
continue stuff.
Sorry.
The Uyghurs, the Uyghur.
Well, here's the thing. If you look at that region, if you look at that region, it's sprawling, right? It's sprawling, and everywhere's completely developed now. And people there are talking because there are independent people that have gone there and done interviews, and the people there are talking about how much more prosperous they are now than they were 10 years ago. There was one taxi driver that was being interviewed, and like even the houses, they're all modern, they're all like renovated, redeveloped, right? And street lights and the roads, it's all developed. So this taxi driver, he was talking about how, you know what, uh before the development that came in, both of his parents were working and they were barely making any. It was hard to make a living. He
Hmm.
goes, he's now doing one job, and with this one job, he's earning more than both his parents combined, and he could provide for his family. And even when I was in China, so where I was staying was a place called Gujen, and Gujen is more on the outskirts, right? So it wasn't the main city; it was more on the outskirts. Um, and it's right outside a city called Zhongshan, right? And and Gujen is not again, it's a small place, not a big population, but even there were Muslims running restaurants. The
Hmm.
Muslim population is much smaller compared to the main cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou. Guangzhou, there's a lot more because I took my flight there. There's a lot more Muslims in the main cities, obviously, but there were a few Muslim restaurants there as well. I was eating at a Uyghur place. It's a butcher's, but at the
Hmm.
same, it's a restaurant as well. And you just go there. You look at the fridge and you're like, oh, I want this, this, and that, and then they'll grill it for you. And right next, on the same road, there was another one. I'm not sure if they were Uyghur or they were Hui Muslims. So Hui Muslims, they're more Arab and Persian descent. Uh, they were descended from the traders, the Muslim traders that went there. And they also mixed with the local population. I'm not sure if they're Hui or Uyghur. But yeah, same thing. And everyone there seems to be getting on with it. And just and you know when I went to Guangzhou, right, the halal places everywhere, halal places everywhere, and in the main cities there's Pakistani restaurants, And the Chinese, they love Pakistani food. And the Pakistani business, they're hiring Chinese staff that are working for them. And over there, like, don't get me wrong, there's some ignorance there, but it's not like how it is in the West. They're not aggressive or anything like that. Everyone's just working, everyone's just getting on with it. Like, they're not aggressive people. They're not aggressive people over there. And just the honesty that's there, there's a hell of a lot of honesty. Like, I'll give you an example. Uh, there's an app they have called Alipay, right? I'm not sure if you heard of it.
Yeah, I heard of it.
Yeah, so there's two ways to make a payment on that. So one is you go onto the barcode, and then the shop owner or whoever it is, they'll scan the barcode for you, and it automatically deduct from your wallet. Alternatively, there's another app. There's another option there where it's called it says scan on there, and if you click on scan, there's literally a barcode or a QR code on pretty much every single shop. You scan it and you manually type in how much you're paying, and it's so much right. Everyone there is honest, so no one will cheat the shopkeeper like that, right? So they won't cheat. They won't say like something's you bought something for, I don't know, 150 yuan, which is like, I don't know, 16 pounds roughly. Everyone will type in everyone will type in 151, right? Whereas over here, over in the West, even in Pakistan, they'll take advantage, right? You know what it's like, right? And then when it comes to check this out, like I don't want to digress too far from the topic. I'm going to stay relevant. One thing I want to mention was just like how I've seen how nobody can compete with China, right? And I've seen how industry is it. Like, everyone knows China's the world's factory, but until you actually go there and see it for yourself, it's like it's on a scale that, like, living in the West, you can't fathom until you go there. Like, where I'm staying, like, how it works, the main cities, they probably specialize in three different kinds of trades, right? And if you're in the smaller cities or towns, they specialize in one. Where I was staying, Gujen, is known as the City of Lights. All it is over there is light shops, chandeliers, lights, chandeliers, lights, chandeliers. That's it. There's one shopping mall next to my hotel. It was 13 floors, and I thought, you know what? Let me check out and see what they got. All it was, light shops, chandeliers, lights, chandeliers, and there's a coffee shop at the bottom. Huh?
13 floors of just lights and
Yeah,
chandeliers.
seriously. And I think I've seen three shopping malls that were like that. The other ones were like 10 floors or 11 floors. The other one was probably 8 or 9 floors. But still, all those floors were just like chandeliers, lights, right? And they had those I don't know if they have them in UK, but there's these mirrors, and you touch them, and the light turns on around the edges. So it's touch screen,
Right.
right? I don't know if do they have them here?
I've seen the ones where the smaller mirrors, they're circular. It has a button, you press it, and there's like an LED outline of that
Okay.
light.
Oh no, so it's not a button, and it's not a small mirror. It's like when you go into the bathroom, and every bathroom has a big mirror, right? Or you might have a big mirror in your bedroom. It's like that, or like a dressing table. You have a mirror for a dressing table, right? Where you just sit down, and right? It's a nice big mirror, and you just like look at yourself. You basically just touch that. There's no button. You just touch it. It's touch screen, right? Like an iPhone. You just touch it, and the lights turn on, right?
That's correct.
No, trust me. And then when I went to Guangzhou, there's three things it's known for. One of those things is textiles, right? And what's it? Oh, you know what? The journey there was, I loved it, right? Like, it's I'm still mind blown by how it works. Like, I took the high speed train, right, from where I was Gujen to Guangzhou. Now, check this out. Gujen to Guangzhou is 2.5 hours by car. I took the high speed rail. Guess how long it took with a high speed rail?
20 minutes?
Like 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, because my dad, He's been to China many times because he's in the printing business. Unfortunately, I haven't been with him. Inshallah, next time I'll join
Man,
him.
try
But
take a trip and see for yourself. It's
he
like,
goes to the Canton Fair that happens in October and April.
oh, okay,
Uh,
yeah, I know about that. I know about the
so
Canton Fair.
he was telling me as well, like specific districts specialize in furniture, for example, stationery, shoes, textiles, like you mentioned.
Yes,
And he showed me pictures and videos and the train you mentioned, because he mostly stays Guangzhou. I think once or twice he
Guangdong.
stayed Guangzhou, and I think once or twice he stayed at Yiwu.
Yeah, I know you. You was known for like small things, like small quantities. That's the best way I can describe it. Like
Yeah,
small things. Like for
like
example, like
a few hundred or like a few thousand,
yeah,
and you
no,
get
not like that. Like like small pens, like stuff like that. Like small things. That's the best way I can describe it.
right,
Right.
right, right.
And then right, so it took like what 15 to 20 minutes to do an 2.5 hour car ride, right? So I landed in Guangzhou
Hmm.
station, and by the way, it was only like a 327, right, for that train ride, £3.27, right? Then I went right. Then I took a motorcycle taxi because they have them in Pakistan as well, like motorcycle taxis. So I took a
Yeah, yeah.
motorcycle taxi right from the train station to an area called Clothing City because that's one thing that Guangzhou is known for textiles. So I went to and literally it was a normal size motorcycle, but it was chopped basically. So there's a slot at the front of the motorcycle, right, for my suitcase, for my luggage, like a
What?
proper size suitcase. Yeah, seriously. And then at the back there's a second seat for me with two small handles coming out. And
That's
I'm
that's
I'm not glad
nuts.
when you look at from when you hear that like with the like with your like with a Western mind, it's like how does that even make sense? Is my luggage even safe? I was like, you know what, just trust it. And yeah, my luggage didn't move one bit, and I land and he took me to Clothing City, and literally it's just a massive square full of clothing shops, right? And on the way, I've seen like quite a few halal places. Like there was one place, it was it was Arab, Asian, and African food at the same time,
What
right?
type of
Which
Arab?
uh
What type of Arab were they?
uh it just said Arab, so I think it just said Arab, but African as well.
Oh, okay. So it could be Morocco, Egypt,
Yeah.
Algeria.
So
Hmm.
which is a combination you don't really see. Like you don't see Asian and African food in like it's not a combination that you see, right? But
Maybe
yes, there's quite a few.
maybe Azaza Bazaar, the buffet.
Bro, that's like what Chinese. There's Mexican. There's Italian.
There's Pakistani as well, and there's Indian. There's two separate ones, but they're really small.
Okay, I haven't been there in years. I haven't been there in years, but okay, maybe they've expanded. But anyway, yeah. So I landed close to it's a massive square full of clothes shops, right? And there's one shopping mall there, and and it looks small from the outside, but here's the thing with China and Korea, like you'll see buildings that are look small from the outside, and you go inside, it's big. It's like something like 6, 7 floors. I'm like, okay, how do you do that? But anyway, so I walked in and checked out this shopping mall with 6 floors. The top three were conference and offices. The bottom three all clothes shops. There's
With
one convenience.
conference offices like furniture.
No, conference like basically just like offices for meetings.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So what's it? And literally, there was one convenience store at the entrance. There's one electronics store. Can't remember which floor it was. One kitchen appliance. Everything else was just clothes on those 3 floors. And it's like a maze. You get lost in there. Just clothes, and that's it. And now that big thing. Now China's quite developed. Things that are getting a bit more expensive, and now they're outsourcing to places like Vietnam. But yeah, like when you like what
Vietnam's blowing up as well.
yeah. So now they're outsourced. So China's now using Vietnam as basically its factory, somehow to how the West was using China as its factory. But
Hmm.
yeah, and so when I go China, so when I went China, I seen how it works, and I seen how nobody can compete the way they work. Um, the way they work. But here's they work and they balance their family lives. So you know that 996 crap. I don't know if you heard of that. That's not true.
996.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
No. Well, what's 996?
Oh, okay, so basically, I seen a video of this thing called 996, saying that and basically advertised as so basically nine. So basically, it means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. So is that video saying that all Chinese in general they work this much? They work 9 to 9 and 6 days a week. So and now at that point, I believe at that time I believed it, right? And yeah, but when I went to China, no one really works like that. And in fact, I asked one Chinese guy about it, and at first he was confused. And he thought about it. He goes, "Oh, now I know what you're on about." And he goes, "No, that thing there, that started off as a joke. That was a joke." And he goes, "If the government made it work like that, there would be riots," which is very different to how.
Don't you remember during COVID, bro? Like they locked everyone in their apartments, and the Chinese came out on the street and they started like punching up the professionals, if you want to call them professionals, in the hazmat suits, and the police and the security guards, because when they were locked in their houses, their bank accounts were then hard to get access into, because what China was doing, if you remember, they were tracking everyone's movements. You're not allowed to spend more than 2 hours outside your apartment. I mean, they had a set
Well, here's the
curfew.
thing. Like, I'll tell you something. You've heard. Let me give another example. You've heard of what's it? The Chinese social credit system, right?
Mm.
I went there and I've not seen any sign of that.
Probably
And
it's like
bro, the way people drive, the
probably
way
it's an
people drive,
unspoken, yeah.
huh?
Probably it's an unspoken code. Like you just know it's there, type of
Well, here's
thing.
the thing. I've not seen any sign of it. Like even then, you get a certain feeling, like you'll
Mm.
pick something up in it. I've not seen any sign of that, right? And in fact, right, and in fact, Chinese people are saying, wait, that's not true at all. There's nothing like that here. So all that was just a BS. Like literally, the way people drive in China is kind of like how they drive in Pakistan. It's like a mix between Pakistan and the West. And you know how people are like with motorbikes in Pakistan? It's like that in China as well. Like people are riding their motorbikes like that. But
Mm.
over in China, it's like you don't feel like you're in danger when people do that. Like when I was there, like motorcycle would be like coming in very close proximity to me, and I don't feel any danger. So again, that social credit system was nonsense. That video that you're on about, I haven't seen it, but I did see a video before that, and literally it was the video was it was a recording of like Chinese people just walking down the road, and a car would stop by, and they would literally get picked up and chucked in the car. But
Mm.
here's the thing: a lot of these videos are actually staged.
There were a lot of staged COVID videos. For example, people dying in hospitals in Italy, that was fake. People in America on the hospital beds saying, "Oh my God, like my asthma, and oh my God, I need this like machine. Guys, make sure like social distance." They were crisis actors. People literally screenshotted their face, Google Lens it, and found their actor portfolios online through agencies and so on. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll tell you one thing that's not BS about China, bro. It's two
Okay.
things. One first thing is I covered it in my video, A Career of Sin, because I was talking about exploitation. Is that China is making Mexico into a automobile powerhouse. They've invested so much money because China controls majority of the world's battery technology, whether it's research, supply chain, deployment, even the regulations. They have lobbyists in the UK, in Europe, and America, and everywhere else. And that is problematic as well because electric vehicles need batteries. Batteries are primarily charged with lithium. Where does the lithium come from? There's only three, I believe three or four, I might be off from the numbers here, but three or four Chinese conglomerates that manage and basically own these lithium mines. And when I see like a small auntie, for example, sorry, no, I see an auntie with a small child. Like the Africans, they have a piece of fabric, they wrap the child behind them. There's like a
Okay.
fabric that goes around, and the child's behind her, and she has a pickaxe which is probably big as this glass. And bro,
Okay.
she's sat on the ground, and there's like a teenager next to her with like some dusty flip flops, ripped t-shirt. He's there, and there's like another uncle who's 45 maybe. He looks a bit seasoned. He's like doing it at a pace, and I'm like, on one side, we need this stuff because without that lithium, this is not possible, and a lot of other things aren't possible. But on the other hand, the amount of corruption that has happened that led things come to that point is scary, bro. Because I genuinely believe that on Yawm al Qiyamah, in connection with the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, paraphrasing, which is when you see an evil, stop it with your hands, and then the last stage is think and consider it bad and evil and distasteful in your heart.
Yes.
And you know who Sahil Adim is?
Yeah, I know Sahiluddin.
Yeah, I like one of his comments on this hadith. He says, if you're a woman, then that last stage makes sense for you. You're a bit sensitive, or like you're a child. You know, you look at something you do, but you can't stop it. So you're like, I hate this person. I don't like this situation. But as a man, it's your job to get up and do something about it.
Okay, yeah,
But
actually, yeah, that's good. Yeah.
because at the end of the day, from a neuroscience point of view, and even from the Islamic point of view, it's us men who lead the way, so to speak, and we lead the way either to good or evil, and we are capable of doing both. So, just want to touch on China quickly before we jump back to Congo. I started reading a biography a few years ago. I never finished it, but my dad told me about this guy called Chu Enlai, Zhou, and his last name is Enlai. He was a diplomat shortly after Mao's era,
Mm-hmm.
and the Americans tried to assassinate him. But the crazy thing is that he was in connection with the Rothschilds and Jewish bankers when China's golden period was being built. And I was shocked when I came across that. And I couldn't find any books at the time on that, but there was a lot of, like in journals, you have research papers, you have articles,
Yeah.
peer review, and so on. I read a couple abstracts, and I was like, oh my days. So even in terms of China, like these tiny hat, blue and white people, they're there from
They're
like
there. They're everywhere. Even within Bollywood, a lot of the actresses have you know, small hat heritage, small hat, big nose, heritage, right? And also,
disgusting.
I was reading a book about 2 years ago. I didn't get to finish it because it's a big book and it's packed with information. This is about the rail empire. The
Oh, you
sorry,
mentioned that. Remember?
yeah, the railroad industry in America. So after slavery, after cotton, after that stopped, the next big money making industry was railroads, right? And some of the big time people there, right? And I'll mention two of them, and I'll mention how this author tells you what they are in his book. So again, they were like the little hat people,
Hmm.
right? Actually, you know what? No, not even little hat people, because they're not even that. Originally, they're fire worshippers. They're converts. You know that, and they converted for political reasons. Do you
The
remember?
Khazars you told me, yeah, yeah.
Yes, the
That was,
Khazar Empire, the Khazar Empire. So
hmm.
they are actually they are actually that people, right? So there were two businessmen that are mentioned there, Jim Fisk and Jay Gold, and these two people, and obviously they were those people, and how it was mentioned uh, in the book that they were those people was that uh, the police were out for them, and these big business people, they actually had their own military, and they were in standoff with the police as well. They were like firing cannons at each other. So they had their own military. That's how much money they had. And two of them, Jay Gold and Jim Fisk, on the right, he mentioned in his books that on the Sabbath day was when, because there was a law in America that no Jew can be arrested on this day. So they would literally just walk out on that day in front of the police. The police can't do anything. And Jim Fisk, he was into debauchery. So he would just like go to the gentleman's club and just do whatever,
Mm.
right? Jay Gold, he was more of a family man, strict family man, and he would just go to his family. And but Jay Gold, one amazing thing about him, like not in a positive way, just like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it's like amazing how he done it. Is that out of his 20 close, no one ever heard him speak. Out of his 20, out the 20 people closest to him that he was in close proximity to, he was always in like close connection with. Only two of them have ever heard him speak. The rest, he would just communicate by sign language or by nodding and gestures. Uh, that sort of communication. The reason why, so not if he was ever taken into court, nothing. If he ever said anything, nothing would be able. They would be able to use anything he said against him.
Mm.
But this how they mention it, and they're in China, they're in Japan. A third of the Japanese have Jewish ancestry. You know that?
What?
Yeah, seriously.
What? A third of them.
A third.
But I don't think they go to the satanic temple, I'll call it, and do the whole
Well, here's it.
Mishnah
Behind the scenes,
or
you don't know.
Mishnah.
Behind the scenes, you don't know what they do.
That's true.
Behind the scenes, you don't know
Mm.
what they do. And even with Bollywood, you know the Parsis. A lot
Mm.
of
But
actors and actresses in Bollywood actually have small hat ancestry. The original ones, right? They they were small hat people, which is crazy. And even in Afghanistan, there's a tribe in Afghanistan that are small hat ancestry,
I know about that because I remember
and Burma as well.
a couple of years ago, Burma, I didn't know. A couple of years ago, I saw a funny video of two tiny hat people, Afghani tiny hat people, arguing each other in, I think it was Pashto, and it's hilarious. But the thing with also the tiny hat people, if you go back to the original ones, one thing that struck me, and I managed to find a really good book, and I want to cover this on my podcast, and I guess we can discuss it in the future, inshallah. There was an incident, right, where there's slightly two varying accounts, but it's the same incident. So I'll tell you what one of the differences is. One is that a Muslim woman
Yeah.
went to went to a Jewish jeweler. Another one says that the Jew was a blacksmith. So that's the difference in two different
Okay.
accounts we have, this historical incident. And those Jews were of the Banu Qanuqa tribe. And Qanuqa was one of the far, far, far descendants because much of their tribes are named after, as we would say in Urdu, Buzurg, like those elders. So what this disgusting Jew did, like imagine this, bro. Even
Yeah.
just think, even just thinking about it, something that happened almost 1,400 years ago or so, makes me angry because you picture it that the Muslims just arrived in Yathrib, Medina, and the tiny hat people were there already waiting for Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Although they missed out, not missed out, but they abused Isa Alayhi Salam. So Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the last straw for them. That's why they're a cursed nation forever, till the end of times. And so what happened is this Muslim lady went to this tiny hat. Let's say he's a jeweler or blacksmith, whatever. She went there to buy something, and another tiny hat person was there. And what he did, he played a prank. So the Arab women, you can also see this. I don't know which museum. I saw a picture on Wikipedia, but they had like an outfit from that time. So it's one long abaya, and there's no like cuts in terms of like the top is separate and the skirt bit is just one thing.
Okay.
And what he did is he probably her outfit was a bit different or something. He took the opportunity and he pinned her bottom bit with the seat she was sitting on. It's probably wooden, right, or something. And when she got up, bro, her backside was exposed. and she screamed, and there was a Muslim nearby, a young man. He killed the actual tiny hat person who did that. Then the other tiny hat person who was buying and selling from the lady, he killed that Muslim man, and but that woman ran away. She came running to Medina and she was screaming and shouting, traumatized. Obviously, think about it, bro. It's insane. Unlike these tiny hat people, we don't own or run the corn industry, right? These people are the pioneer. For Marcus Hirschfeld, yeah, during the 20th century, when a German political group was ruling that part of the world, they started transsexualism and homosexualism. They had brothels and so on.
Yeah, I've seen some of your links. I've seen some of yours.
Bro, is you know what? When you follow the money, it's always them. Anyway, so she was screaming, shouting, traumatized, and the Muslims, bro, not one, not two, but Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gathered everyone. He's like, we're going to go and finish them off. And then what happened is, because that guy died already, they had a peaceful agreement, the Muslims and the Jews, the Banu Qaynuqa at the time. They became Muslim eventually, but I don't want to get the names mixed up. I always get them mixed up because there's two Sa'ds. There's Sa'd ibn Mu'adh and there's another one. Sa'd bin Abi Waqas. One of them was actually one of the head of that tribe at that time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he was a Jew who converted to Islam, and I believe he's one of the 10 who were promised heaven on planet Earth. The point is, bro, that when I was reading Congo, I was like, okay, how did Leopold, for example, make his money? So he exploited Congo with the rubber industry. He helped set up a company that everyone knows, at least everyone who has a car or has some interest in cars, called Goodyear, still exists. He set
Okay.
up that company, bro. Imagine that. And what they did, they used to peel off the skin of especially black men because it was thicker, but they didn't leave any woman, child, or man unpeeled. They peeled everyone, and they would mix it with the rubber and the gum that would come from this very specific species of trees that, subhanallah, is only found in Congo, nowhere else in the world. And so they started to produce tires and then rubbers for machinery and so on. So I was like, hang on a second, what kind of family did he descend from? So upon further research, you probably know this, that sugar trade was a big thing back in the 16th, 17th, and 18th up to the 19th century. And I'm not sure if you played a game called Red Dead Redemption Part 2.
I played at someone's house. I do know about it.
Bro, for me, that's the greatest game ever because I learned a lot about birds and herbs and nature from playing that game. And in fact, there was a scientific study done at University of Sussex, Essex or Sussex, one of the two, where they tested gamers and non-gamers and their knowledge of certain birds and animals and hunting techniques. And those who played Red Dead Redemption 2 on a regular performed better. So it was a between subject test. And they show a character in that game. His name is Leviticus Cornwall. And Leviticus, as you know, is a chapter from the Bible, Old Testament. And he's in the railway business, he's in the sugar business, he's in all the businesses you can imagine, yeah. And his right hand man, now I looked at pictures again because obviously I don't want to play the game. He looks like Tiny Hat with the nose and that look. The way they portray in the game, obviously they don't mention it because Rockstar are very subtle. And the second thing is there's also a part in the game where you crash on an island, and that island is what the equivalent of that island in the game is Cuba. And as you know, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and the Caribbean in general, they as well, subhanAllah, have a special kind of sugarcane that is only grown there. Because with that sugarcane, you can get molasses, you can get sugarcane, sweeter and in more quantity compared to India or Africa, for example. And North Africa, especially, they're quite abundant in sugarcane. But bro, again, when you follow the money and you see how things are, the reason I went through all of this history of Congo and the Belgium invasion is because I saw parallels more or less with Falasteen and Trump. And then I'm sure you probably saw like King of Jordan just doing all that, bro. He was sitting there like the mistress that he is, and because his grandfather, yeah, his grandfather, he was boys with Churchill. There's pictures of his grandfather with Churchill, and his grandfather was actually shot by a Falastini because Jordan granted permission for England regarding some military base or some training or something. And this was during, I'll tell you another thing as well, bro. I discovered this recently. There were a group of tiny hat people in World War One that joined the British Army specifically to fight in the Middle East. And some historians argue this was the origin of the Mossad, and they were called the Jewish Legion. The Jewish Legion, their charter was drawn up by a guy called Sidney Webb. Of course, he's again the tiny hat people. Sidney Webb, bro, he wrote the first manifesto of the Labour Party, and he's the guy who he passed the bar here in London, and there's a famous clause called Clause 4 or Clause 5 in the Labour Charter, which made them attract so many union workers back in the day. I'm not familiar what that clause is. I'm not a historian. I'm not a political scientist or an expert in law. What I'm saying is when you connect the dots, the way the Labour Party pushed this idea of, okay, Arab separate, even if you're a Jew, Arab separate, and the actual so-called Jews, i.e. Zionists, separate. And then I don't know, I don't remember this guy's name, but he was the head of the British cavalry in Burma. You mentioned Burma Jews.
Yeah.
This guy, you can Google him. I can't remember his name right now. He was the head of the British cavalry in Burma. He set up the IDF. He trained the IDF on parachuting, on stormtrooping, on how to use weaponry in that time, and gave them this training. And again, Labour Party, Sidney Webb writing up laws, and now you've probably seen this news that came out this morning. It's shocking, bro, because there were 4 individuals, a Falastini family, that found a loophole through some lawyer that using the Ukrainian refugee program, they can come into England. And the judge was like, yep, everything is fine. There's no issue. Kemi, the coon she is, her husband, again, tiny hat, blue-white people. Her last name, Kemi Bedanuk or whatever. It's Ashkenazi last name. She said, oh, look, the Labour Party, there's a loophole. And this is a scheme they set up anyway. This is a scheme. The what's his name? Boris transitioning into Rishi set up. Oh yeah, refugees come. We'll give extra P to the landlord of a property who houses Ukrainian refugees.
I remember
that. Money laundering scheme anyway. And bro, Keir Starmer in Parliament, when the parties face to face, question each other, debate each other. Keir Starmer's like, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna get the law changed, and I'm gonna ask that judge to reconsider. Bro, this is what I'm saying. They have the power to do that, so-called power. Obviously, they don't, but the lobbyists can manipulate and maneuver them to do that. But arms trade to Scumrail, offering surveillance, because UK, one of the biggest military bases in that part of the Mediterranean region is in Cyprus. And every single day from November 2023 till I believe this so-called ceasefire was announced, there were trips every single day by that plane collecting data, pictures, WhatsApp, videos, Telegram, Facebook, video call, so on and so forth. Because a lot of Falastini, they're getting things through like tunnels, through smuggling. People are smuggling it in. They're using code names, so on and so forth. And it's that level of intelligence that they have right now. And this is one thing that made me think for days, bro. And this is and Sahil Adim sparked this in my mind. He was like, these vile creatures, the tiny hat people, are using a tampered revelation, which they call revelation, the Old Testament, because if you
Mhm.
remember, Satan Yahoo spoke about Amalek. They were the people that the Canaanites, the true Jews, were ordered by Allah apparently to go and kill them, the men, the women, the children, the donkey, and so on. So he said, yeah, yeah, the Palestinian Amalek, and so on, and everyone in the United Nations just there listening with the little translator in the head and whatever. And he said this guy went there and read a false revelation as if everyone believes it, and we Muslims, we have the true revelation, and we're just sitting here and talking about this and that, and oh, can you do wudu with socks or not? Can do you need a wali or not? Because in the Hanafi madhab, the woman doesn't need a wali. That's true. I got this authenticated, not personally, but through a live stream that Daniel Haqiqatju and Muhammad Hijab
Yeah.
did. And he said, yeah, in the Hanafi mother, a woman doesn't need a wali. Like she can just do it and then inform her so-called wali. And in the Hanbali mother, a man can go and meet a woman without a wali. So if I'm gonna, for example, if someone was to go and meet a girl and I'm the wali of, let's say, the girl, my daughter, I don't need to be there, according to how Hanbali mother. The guy is there with the intention of, yeah, I'm just gonna get to know her and see her. Blah. Bro, we live, you know, the type of age we live in. A man will just need a little bit of a chance and go crazy. So
Yeah.
so
No.
the whole idea, bro, is like this intellectual war that we're living in, and alhamdulillah, how can I phrase this? You know what? I think the best way I can phrase it, because if I say this word, bro, they're gonna track. They're at least gonna track me down. So I'm just gonna show you something by a Jew. This thing here, this event, right?
Mhm.
This event is being exposed now by so many people. One guy I was listening to, I haven't read his books. Again, dense, thick books. A guy called David Irving, English guy, and he's banned from a lot of European countries. And he said, I've read the German documents, the French documents, the English documents. He's an old guy, historian from Essex, actually. And he's in his 80s now. But he got fined, he got ridiculed, he got jailed, bro, just by questioning this event. And he said that I read documents and there's no single mention of the gas that was used, apparently. And he said the rate at which 6 million individuals were to be unalived is impossible mathematically, because you need the gas, you need the power, you need the infrastructure. He said it's impossible. And in fact, someone posted under his video on, on X, not a meme, but an actual picture of the plaque where it says 2 million were killed here in the loving memory of blah blah blah. So they changed the figure so much
Yeah.
because there was a propaganda in the 80s and 90s that they used to melt these tiny hat people and make soaps and lampshades out of them. That was proven to be fake, and they changed the numbers. And bro, another thing I saw on X that a lot of people were going crazy about, there are so many tiny hat people owned charities. $10 million, $5 million, $6 million, $2 million, $8 million, $12 million. This museum, that charity, this refugee helpline, this suicide helpline, all these like charities and NGOs. And then Norman Finkelstein actually exposes this in this book. And when I read this, bro, I was making bare notes, getting my arsenal ready. And if there's one book I would recommend anyone to understand how these disgusting, vile people operate, at least in the USA, most of them, this book exposes it. And because he's a tiny hat person himself, they can't really unalive him. Do you get me? They can't Jeffrey Epstein him. So it's
Mhm.
so the fact that they control education. That's why, for me, neuroscience, it's one of those areas in science where paradigms can't be bought. like with psychology and other areas of social science. There used to be, for example, a theory, not even a theory, bro. It was this idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Have milk as much as you can. Cigarettes are good for you, and all these narratives that were pushed. And how many pharma companies end up paying millions in fines after earning billions? The most famous one being the Sackler family, and yes, they are the tiny hat, blue and white people.
Okay, someone mentioned the Sackler family to me a few years ago. Yeah, carry on.
Sackler family, they own one of the biggest pharma companies in the US called Purdue Pharma, Purdue Pharmaceuticals. And they pushed a drug called Oxycontin. And Oxycontin was based off of the synthetic manufacturing of opioids. And where do opioids come from? Opium. And where was the opium coming from? Afghanistan. How do I know? Because this opium crisis happened in the 2000s. And who was in Afghanistan in the 2000s? Why was Afghani opium production gone up like 90+% during this time period? So, bro, it's all a scam, and us Muslims we're being used. Whether it's the king of Jordan, whether it's the president of Egypt, whether it's the current leaders, so-called leaders in Pakistan, even the what's his name, Mahmoud Abbas, and who's I don't know what he's a puppet, but Mustafa, the prime minister of Palestine. Bro, these people are so disingenuous, and the fact that UAE are doing atrocities in Sudan, bro,
Yeah, so even Qatar is involved. Even Qatar is involved with stuff like that.
involved, and everyone here, I'm sure you know this as well. A lot of people our age are excited to go UAE and Qatar for career and tax. I get that, but upon at least past few months, upon further research, there's so much tiny hat, blue and white people money out there. I couldn't believe it, bro. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, where can I go? Where do I go? And then you look at Saudi Arabia and they're trying to not even liberalize it, like ultra liberalize pro max the whole thing. And they're allowing tourists in Medina. They're building that long neon thing. They made the Makkah clock tower through,
Yes.
through Goldman Sachs.
Have you seen that the new version of Makkah, the Golden Makkah, which is meant to be like a massive shopping
Yeah, I
center?
saw that online a couple of years ago, and I didn't think it was real or not, but a lot of noise was regarding this golden cube. But even like with sports and entertainment, Saudi Arabia is at the forefront, and they're distracting everyone with the World Cup. Oh, Saudi Arabia, you can't drink alcohol. That's the least of anyone's worries in terms of the bigger picture. From an Islamic point of view, yeah, the source of all evils is khamr, is alcohol. We don't deny
Yeah.
that, but
But so
bro,
there's a
when
larger context, like people, what is people are arguing over smaller things when they're missing the bigger context. When there's a bigger thing going on, and that thing is disunity. Like there was like there was a speech I was watching. The speech I watched a few years ago is by Abdul Rahman Green. So he's an English convert,
yeah, yeah, I know.
and obviously he's Salafi. But for this video, right, he said he's gonna be mature and he's gonna put like difference aside because he was talking about Imam Shamil. You know Imam Shamil from Dagestan, the one that fought
The
the Russians.
the one that Khabib is also is he related to or descends from his tribe?
I He's not a descendant from him specifically. I think he's a descendant of one of his generals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
So obviously, even in Dagestan and Chechnya, there's a larger Sufi population,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the large Sufi heritage. And for this talk, even Abdul Rahman Green, he was saying, you know what, for certain issues like this, we do not let differences come between us. We're still Muslims, and we should treat each other as such, obviously. And he's talking about how like the great feats of Imam Shamil, like how I can't remember how tall the wall was, but he cleared it. He killed 4 Russians, and there was one Russian who was sat on horseback. He literally just sliced him in half. One stroke, just literally just sliced him in half. And like, like The one half fell on one side, the other half fell on the other side,
You know
right?
what, bro? I genuinely believe angels did help Muslims in certain battles. For example, during the war of in the 60s between Egypt and the Tiny Hat people, I through my dear wife, I, I know of people. I haven't met them personally, but the stories I've been told and I heard that when they were on the battleground in the 60s, they said that we didn't feel like we were there as we would usually feel like we're there. It was like a different level of consciousness. We felt an
Yes,
external power. Power is with us, like angels, basically, and possibly the good jinns as well, because the good jinns also do dhikr, right?
yes,
And it's also, I mean, a parallel can be drawn when one of the battles the Muslims fought against the Quraysh, who were again funded by, the Jews at the time. I believe they were funded or they teamed up in terms of getting intelligence, and a massive wind just gushed the
yes,
pagan Arab.
about yes, yeah. So they do help out, even with one of the wars between Pakistan and India. Uh, the angels helped out there, and also my friend who's on her journey, on her conversion journey. She sent me a link, and it was Israelis, right, who were scared one minute. They were like, you know what? It's like all these bullets are coming out of nowhere and firing at us, right? But there's no one there. But these bullets are just firing at us and they're killing us. We had no choice but to run. So basically, there's no one there, but bullets are coming at them, right?
Even
And
sorry,
yeah, no, but also I was just say so it seems like there's people there. The angels are there, and they're fighting them with their own level of weaponry or the same amount of force that they're using, but back at them, right? So, so yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that in terms of these angels that helped our, let's say, ancestors in this case, I think the reason that was, despite Aqidah and so on, that when push came to shove, everyone were united and no one was like a waste man. They were on it. Grab the gun, go for it. If they had to say goodbye to their loved ones,
Mhm.
they did it already. And actually, yeah, I was also going to mention that in Falasteen during the earlier months of this genocide, people said we could smell scent, like a beautiful ether coming from some of the martyred individuals, just regular people. And that just doesn't happen randomly, bro.
No, of course, no, of
The,
course,
and there's a well-known rabbi. I don't know his name. I don't know his name, and I came across him because of this video and just some basic research. I didn't go too much into it because wallahi, sometimes I feel like shaitan is just like around me when I start researching too much into like Kabbalah, Mishnah, the Talmud. It's stuff. Anyway,
no,
upon
of
like
course,
research, is this fat rabbi, and he's like this in the video, and he's like, with this Ishmaels, because we're from Ismail, right?
yeah,
He's like, these Ishmaels, it's really hard. They're the toughest of our enemies. That's what he said. He said the toughest of our enemies. He said their prayer is 5 times a day, and they do constant. What did he say? Counting, something like that. He said, yeah, he said they do constant counting of blessings, and for us, it's very hard to break that barrier. And if you probably seen this or not, there's another video of a witchcraft expert, a Satanist. He was saying that it's so hard to get control of Muslim people and break that barrier that's around them, which is again, the Malaika and the Jinn. And what's even more crazier, bro, is that I truly believe we are in that stage where now the script is being flipped. Now, where if you remember in our when we were growing up, at least our parents and grandparents would say, oh, Gore, the white man, the European, oh, this and that. Now, when we're going to be 60, 70, inshallah, life, Allah wills, our children and grandchildren are going to look back at our time, possibly this live stream and other stuff that we're going to post, and be like,
Sure.
you know what, you guys were actually on the good side. And the bad,
Definitely.
yeah, inshallah, bro, definitely. And these other folks who had a bit more money and a bit more influence, a bit more power, these were the evil ones. Because think about it, bro. The sad part is, as you touched on this a little bit, I want to expand a little bit on this. Is Muslims are celebrating Christmas now. They go to these weird parties and Halloween dressing parties, and even in Saudi Arabia, you see it. Even in Pakistan, bro, they have Comic Con.
Yeah.
Did you see it? It's so gay, bro, so bent. And they're trying so hard to fit a square in a round peg, and it's never going to happen, right? But we see this ultra sexualization, liberalization, westernization of some parts of the Muslim world. And it's the job of not even all of them, actually, a select few of us to counteract that theologically, technologically, academically, socially, financially, and so on. So another thing I like about Sahil Adim, I don't know why I'm mentioning him so a lot, but he just seems to naturally fit in. He speaks about something in one of his. He spoke about something in one of his presentations. He said, "There's an ayah in the Quran. I can't remember which surah, but Allah is instructing the Muslim directly that uh, gather and compile and gain as much power as you can, financial power, social power, academic power, even physical power and mental power. Because if you study even the earliest Sahaba, bro, who were just regular individuals who no one would really care about up until the point they became Muslim, and now we're speaking about them. One character that, well, there's so many Sahaba I was drawn to, but there's one in particular that I was very much drawn to was Muaz ibn Jabal. And my cousin Abdullah, he asked me a really interesting question. And he said to me, okay, if you could meet any three people, dead or alive, who would you want to have coffee with? Who do you want to have a long conversation with? And who do you want to go on a walk with? So I said to him, look, it's kind of unfair if I say the Prophet's names or Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's obvious, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, excluding the most obvious answers that a Muslim would give, let's be a bit different here. So I said to him that I will have a long conversation with Salahuddin Ayyubi, like a long conversation. I'll go on a walk with Muadh ibn Jabal because Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that he is the one who has the most knowledge of halal and haram. So I'll go on a walk because a walk is a bit therapeutic as well, right? At least for me it is. And I'll ask him, okay, look, music nowadays, YouTube, camera, is this halal or haram? I'll ask the most basic, NPC halal or haram questions. Then I'll go to the high level stuff. And then one person I would have a hot drink with and have a conversation with is in a really weird way. And this person, I don't know why they sprung to my mind, but I thought it's not going to be a long interaction. It's just going to be a very short one. Well, not a very short one, but it's not going to be hours and hours, but it could be. And that person I would like to have a conversation with over some tea would be Abraham Lincoln. Because Abraham Lincoln,
By the way, like, this isn't relevant, but I just thought I'll throw this in there. Abraham Lincoln, he was a champion wrestler, right?
yeah, he
He
was
was a
a
champion wrestler.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was on it, bro. He was
bro.
on it. He
How
built.
many matches did he have? He had some, like, was it over 200? Something ridiculous like that, and he won
Yeah,
pretty much
some
all of them, I think.
in some crazy record. And
But anyway, yeah, carry on. How come? Why Abraham Lincoln?
so I thought either him or maybe Booker T. Washington, one of the two. I tell you why, because Abraham Lincoln, he had this long debate with this other president that you could say the Illuminati, the deep state at the time, wanted to win, and that's why he was assassinated very early on in his presidency. And he was the one he was pushing for. He was a strong abolitionist. He was emancipation of the slaves. He said, to cut this off. So him as a president saying it, his word is gospel, as they say.
Yes.
And that's why they had to kill him off, because you probably know this, the tiny hat and blue and white people, they're the ones who funded, constructed, and managed and insured all the ships that had the slaves on them.
Mm.
And like a lot of ships used to dock at Liverpool, Bristol, it.
Yeah, Bristol, Liverpool, and Glasgow.
Glasgow, Lancashire, Blackpool, these ends, yeah. Those ships were also under the control of the tiny hat, blue, white, big nosed people. And I was shocked, bro. I was shocked. I'm like, oh my days. So these guys weren't actually involved, but they were like, you know what? Here's a pen. You can sign someone's death warrant or you can sign someone's pardon. It's up to you. We're gonna give you the pen though. But they sweet talk and manipulate you. So him and Booker T. Washington, he was a freed slave, and what he would do is when his slave master, because he was a field slave and then he became a house slave. Bro, his biography is the hardest biography, and it's only like that small. His grammar was next level. And the reason I want to speak to him is I want to improve my English to that level.
Okay, all right.
And he used to debate slave masters, and he convinced a lot of slave masters at the time. Once he became free, he became an educated man. In fact, the person who owned him, right, sold him to, I don't know who, to another guy, but he didn't keep him as a slave. He was a low key abolitionist. He was like, you know what, you're a free slave. And then he said, I want to learn. He said, you want to learn? He said, yeah, just give me some bread, basic stuff. I want to spend some time with you. I want to learn. And bro, that ex-slave master, I don't remember his name. You can obviously Google this. He taught him how to read and write English, and he became one of the best speakers in American history and writers. And he, during that tough time, going up to slave masters and be like, this is wrong and you're misusing the Bible. They justified slavery through the Bible.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of those areas are called the Bible Belt, because they were hardcore. Come here, boy, and just whip him. You get me? It was crazy. So, what lesson I would take from him over some coffee, I'll be like, look, we Muslims are in a tough situation, but from you, I can, through learning English and approaching the, let's face it, economic masters of this world, how can I go about it? So, I had a very mixed sort of variety of people, and that's why, bro, reading is so important. And you can watch as many podcasts as you want and TikToks, which are informative. Don't get me wrong. I do the same, of course. But once you put your eyes on the text and you read it yourself, you improve your language. Like, for example, in this whole live stream, one of the things I've been working on over the past few months, I've only said like 3 times. In my recent video, I said 3 times in 2.5 hours, and I said once in my philosophy of history video, and that's about 2 hours as well. And the reason we say and is because we don't have certainty in our words. And I learned this from Khalid ibn Walid. Because if you remember, when Islam was expanding at its peak, when the graph was basically going up, he had a couple of questions to the enemy. He said, either you accept Islam or you're going to pay the jizya. And he said that the men you have, so the men on your side who love life, I have men who love death more than your men love life. I'm paraphrasing. And reading this, obviously not a death, it's literally an instruction, bro. It shows the level of certitude he had in his words. And obviously he made mistakes. There were a group of people he mistook them for being kuffar. They were actually Muslim, but because of the dialect barrier, he killed all of them. And
Oh, okay.
Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in a famous hadith looked at the sky, made a dua. I'm paraphrasing, and he said, "Oh Allah, I have nothing to do with what Khalid did." So I mean, that was one mistake. One fascinating thing, though, bro, is that he destroyed one of the old Arab pagan temples, and he came across a woman that many muhaddis say is a jinn, a blue-colored woman with a very scary and very poisonous look, probably like a seductive look, maybe. And he went to destroy her and he killed her as well.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of companions, bro, they also came across some miraculous situations once in their life. It wasn't like a recurring thing. And that was only because they were close companions of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. For example, Tamim ad-Dari, he went to an island. He
Yes.
he stumbled upon that island. Now, folks like Saladin and others say, well, he entered a different dimension at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
I see the.
probably, bro, because the connection of water in Islam is so deep, and I learned this from him. He talks about Surah Al-Kahf and Siratul Muntaha and how the three, the three rivers. One is the river Nile, the Nile
Yeah.
in Egypt, and I had the honor of drinking that water and showering with it, bro.
Inshallah.
It's different. Like because you live in UK, water here is hard. You feel it and stuff. But that water is like next level. Like the taste and when it hits your body when you do wudu and it hits your beard, different, bro. The second one is the Euphrates, and the third one is the Gion Springs. Now this sounds bit like Chinese or like East Asian. Is actually in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Gion, and that these are three branches of Siratul Muntaha. Is the imagine like a river bank of which all these rivers descend. Now the question is, Allah describes the universe seven layers, and there's layers of water in between. There's no pipes, there's no valves, there's no taps. Where is this water? So I do believe the interdimensional perspective. And if you remember when we first met in 2011, no, 10,
Yeah. Done. Yeah. I
yeah,
remember.
breaking down dimensions to me, I was like, wow, man, this is my gut feeling was like this kind of does make sense because I refuse to believe, and obviously the Quran tells us this, that this is not just the reality. This is our reality. That this materials stuff I'm seeing, and then the emotions and the mental representations that allow me to understand the physical. That's why I love neuroscience and how Islam doesn't say, hey, by the way, this is the area in your brain or around your heart or in your organ connected to your brain. It's going to tell you this. The Quran just mentions something, and then from there you have to put your lens on. Like if you put the lens of a geographer, of an archaeologist, of a biologist, of a chemist, of a geneticist, whatever, bro, you will find something. Like for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah speaks about the corn. That when you do one good deed, it's like it grows into like a corn that has 700. I don't want to obviously misquote the Quran, but it's something to the effect of like beads or like seeds, like a corn, bro, like an
Yeah.
actual. And in genetics, what's the most studied thing? It's corn, it's maize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the easiest to grow, it's the easiest to manipulate, and it's the easiest to compare. For example, human genetics, dogs, and insects as well. The fruit fly, Drosophila, we do experiments on them all the time because they can produce thousands of other insects. So the mating is quick and the reproduction is quick. So you can manipulate different genes and so on. So every animal has a purpose. Even a pig, bro. The disgusting animals. I don't even like dogs either, but bro, you have guide dogs, you have shepherd dogs. So everything has a purpose. So the way I see it, bro, the thing in Palestine, especially in Sudan and Congo and Kashmir and everywhere else where Muslims are suffering, bro, we have to ask the fundamental questions. What can I do to at least contribute to the betterment? Because sitting back and looking at everything and be like, well, I'm just gonna crack open a Coca-Cola. What's the big deal? We're all guilty of it, bro. We accidentally or sometimes without thoroughly taking the steps to find an alternative, we're using their products, whether it's washing powder, antibacterial spray, Apple, Samsung, Dell, HP. They've covered all these corners of our life. So in a sense, we're in a tight chokehold, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's no, for example, there's no Pakistani version of a smartphone, there's no Afghani laptop, there's no Egyptian washing powder that's global, there's no, for example, Chechnyan banking system like PayPal. So for the way I see myself, bro, is I want to and I will change certain aspects of neuroscience because, bro, 80% of them are the tiny hat people. And the reason they are in neuroscience is because most of AI research from the 50s till now is based off of neuroscience. And I learned that recently. And I was like, you know what? It makes sense why these tiny hat people prepare their children to go into economics, banking, law, and neuroscience and technology. Because if you can get hold of these main industries nowadays, bro, you can choke anyone easily.
Well, here's the thing. This is what China's doing. That's good. China, and to a much smaller extent, Russia, because China, right? Here's the thing. Like China, you've heard of what they've done with the deep seek. You heard what they've
Bro,
done with deep.
bro, next level.
They
Next
that
level.
was right. And here's the thing. Like they've got their own. Like you remember when they were talking about, oh look, they banned Google, Facebook. They banned all these things. There's a good reason they done that. So basically, what happened? I think it was in 2014 or 15. Uh, China, Germany, as well as Brazil, they found out that these companies, like Google specifically, it was spying on them. One Brazilian woman found out that one of her emails was being tracked by America, by Google, right? And Brazil, Germany, as well as China, they all complained, right? But then what China did, they obviously made their complaint, and then it was a year later when that's when China announced, okay, you know what, and they announced it peacefully. They go, okay, because we know our private files are being tracked, we're being spied on, we're
Mm.
gonna ban these products in our country, right? And that's what happened. They banned these products in their country. They banned these companies in China, and when they ban them, they create their own version of these products. Like for example, what's it? Uh, Obviously instead of Amazon, they had Alibaba, right?
Mm.
Uh,
Alipay,
right,
WeChat.
Alibaba, right? WeChat, Weibo. I've got WeChat by the way, right? And I've got their version of TikTok, which is Red Note. It's so much more cleaner than the TikTok we have in the West.
That is actually owned by a tiny hat, blue and white person.
Yeah.
So
What's it?
research. They,
I did see your link, and what it is, he doesn't own it fully, right? There's different people that own it. But what is with China? Like you know how North Korea's closed off.
mm,
You know how North Korea is closed off,
hmm.
and you know how I don't know if it's the case now, but Syria did not have a central banking system,
Serious.
and yeah, did not like before the war. I don't know if that's still the case. What's it?
They have
Iran
nothing.
exactly. But here's the thing: what China did, they for those years that they were closed off, they acted like they were communist, but behind the scenes they were working on their own system. And obviously they had these tiny hat people in their country, but they also had their own willpower as well. And they're smart with how they do things. Like they have that pride as a nation, right?
Mm.
So they know what they're doing to keep their cultural pride, right? It's like they had a movement not too long ago called the Hanfu movement. And the Hanfu movement, they will bring back their own like cultural clothing, like with the long clothes. You,
Juba
the
style.
you, yeah, you sort of compare them with the Shalawatagamis, but obviously their own style in it.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
A lot of the youth were going towards that rather than like jeans and stuff like that. And Russia, he's actually kicked out the bankers. He actually stripped the bankers of their power. So the bank is under Russia control, right? So yeah, there are some of these people with like in China, but to a large extent, China's actually very much in control of their country, which is right, right, which is like which and one reason they're allowed to do that is because right again we were talking about this at the start of the podcast. This is one of my initial points about unity. They have unity within their system, right? And it's not the draconian control system, because when I went there and I mentioned 996, right, to one of the Chinese, he goes, "Wait, if they try and force that, there will be riots." So it's not as controlled as right we've been told it is. It's far
Mhm.
less controlled. The system that they're talking about with the social credit system, where they have all these cameras, they're watching you. If you jaywalk, you lose points, and if you go all the way down to zero, it's a capital punishment. They want to implement that system here. UK wants to do that. Why do
You
they
know,
think?
you know
Uh,
which city in the world has the most cameras?
in London.
London.
Yeah,
Mad, isn't it?
exactly.
It's
Ex-
mad.
exactly.
That's a-
Exactly. But yeah, what they're accusing other countries of, they're normally guilty of it themselves. So there's so it's not China's not how it's portrayed, and I sort of knew this already, right? Because obviously once someone in my family has a lot of information when it comes to this stuff, and they actually challenged me when I was coming up with these points as well. Like, oh, China's very controlling, they're this, they're that. They would tell me that it's all nonsense. And now that I've gone there, I've seen it personally that yeah, it's what they're telling you is nonsense. Same thing with Russia and North Korea. Put it this way, like the propaganda in this country, it started with the Irish first, right? Then it was with the blacks, then it
Yeah,
was with the Muslims. I find
yeah.
out when first started with the Irish, when they started in the blacks, a lot of the Irish, they they believed the same media that was targeting them against black people. They were believing all the propaganda about black people. When it was the Muslim propaganda, the Irish and the blacks, they again they start following the media, and now they're talking about China, North Korea, Russia. The Irish, the blacks, and the Muslims, they're believing whatever they say about Russia and China and North Korea. Like I've been to China personally, and it's not how they're portraying it. It's a lot more lax. It's a lot more lax in their portraying, and what's it? Yeah, they China, they have their own version. They done what they meant to. They have their own version of these products, and they have their own industry. They have a world inside their own country. The only thing that they're really lacking on is the semiconductors. These chips.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
so
because they're
then
one.
yeah, so they're not as advanced as the West. That's the only thing that they say they're about like 5 years behind, 5 years or 10 years behind.
I don't believe
Uh,
that.
which they could probably catch up quick, I reckon. But there's that's why
Bro,
there's certain
they made this. They have a supercomputer prototype that they released. I was reading on X, better than the one Nvidia released a month or so ago. You know, that really tiny supercomputer
oh
can do 10
oh
trillion
oh wait,
operations.
I think I've seen something like that.
Yeah,
I
he
think I've
pulls
seen
out
something.
the CEO of Nvidia, really gay sort of promo.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, raw. So China's like, bro, China is on it. That's why they want Taiwan, bro, because they want to make Taiwan into their own little, how can I put
They
this? Like the
they
side chip, you know what I'm saying? Like that can
what's
manufacture.
it? But here's the thing, here's the thing with the China and Hong Kong, that basically is China. That basically is China anyway. That
I mean,
was
if you say
that
that someone from Hong Kong, bro, they'll probably get offended.
Yeah, but here's the thing, it's the truth. Like Hong Kong was a separate island, and the British had it on a lease. The British were running on a lease, and
Mm.
it was a massive money laundering center, Hong Kong, right? And it was on a lease. It is China, and they are Chinese people. They're the same blood. What is they wanted to weaken China, right? So they caused trouble where they could. It was mainly around the borders, like one of them being Mongolia and Tibet as well. By the way, the main portion of Mongolia and the main portion of Tibet, they're both in China. The Tibetan region and the Mongolian region, they're both in China, the main bit. They just carved out Mongolia and Tibet out of that larger region. So basically, they tried to cause trouble all around the border of China to weaken China, right? The same thing they done with the Ottoman Empire. But
Mm.
China managed to stay united and still managed to keep its country. One funny thing is, you know how China actually started flooding the world, like how China actually started trading. It's all because of Pakistan. So originally, China had trade sanctions around it, so nobody could trade with China, right? And then Pakistan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he went to the UN and he made a case for China. He fought two cases for China, right? And I asked ChatGTP about this as well, and ChatGTP gave me quite a lot of information about it. One thing he did, he fought for they were going to give the name of China to Taiwan, and this move here, while it sounds insignificant, would have weakened China significantly, right? Especially when it comes to historical and cultural uh, uh, historical and cultural strength that would severely weaken China. Dolfik Ali Bhutto, made, went to the UN and he fought for China that no, this name belongs to China, not to Taiwan, right? And then he fought again. He goes, because originally there were only four permanent members of the UN. That was United States, France, UK, and USSR, right? So basically the winners of World War II, right? Uh, and then he made a case for China, and he made them up, and to for China to become a permanent member of the UN, and also to remove the trade sanctions. That's what happened. So China became a permanent member of the UN, became the fifth permanent member, and that's what removed all the trade sanctions around China. And that's where they had the strategy of flooding the world with cheap goods, flood the world with cheap goods, making money that way. They played capitalism well. And they took advantage of because capitalism is based off human greed. They take advantage of human greed. China just took that advantage, flooded the world with cheap goods, and no matter how many years everyone was making fun of China, like all the jokes like, "Oh, you got that from China. You got that from China when you have something cheap," right? Well, now they're moving on
That's
to
10 years ago, bro. That was a joke.
yeah, but now they're moving on to medium and high grade products now, like Huawei. They got their own version of the iPhone, which is what the Muslim world should be doing. Huawei, they right. I seen the fold phones. I seen one now which is advertised. And mind you, it's expensive. It's like 3K for this phone.
Honor,
It's
it's three thing. It's Fold
yeah,
3.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
want
it's, so
that looks so
I want to get
sick.
that, but it's like what 3K,
Yeah,
bro.
3 grand.
You
Yeah.
yeah, you can't lie to me. That looks like a good phone. But
A
yeah,
bad.
they're moving on to high grade products. Even when it comes to clothing and textiles, they're moving
Mm.
on to high grade products in all ways. But also another significant thing China is doing, there's a lot of propaganda in China saying that they're going to Africa, they're gonna enslave this, they're gonna do that, they're gonna do that. No, they're not. China has its own philosophy when it comes to foreign intervention. They're not really that religious anymore, but they do have they do believe in certain laws. Like if you do certain things, if you try and make trouble elsewhere, it will come back on you, or you will overstretch. Just focus on your own country. When it comes to other countries, it's strictly trade, right? So, uh, when I was doing agency work, I met this one guy from Cameroon, which the part he was in was a French colony, and he was giving an example of how China actually works when it comes to trade, right? So just 5 miles from his village, there's a forest which can be used for timber, right? But it took an hour to get there because the road was not done, right? It was a horrible, jaggedy road. When the French came in, right, they just they didn't care. They just chopped down the trees and took everything they wanted and just left it. The forest had to grow back naturally. When the Chinese came recently, they struck a deal with local villagers. They go, okay, look, right, we know this forest belongs to you, uh, but we need timber. But what we'll do, we'll make a deal with you. We need this amount of timber. We'll regrow the forest again after we used it. But also, you see this road here? We'll fix this road up for you, right? So now you have access to the forest yourself. That's exactly what they did. They they fix a road for them. So now that 5 miles actually only takes like what? How long does it take to travel 5 miles? Right, under 30 miles an hour. Let's say 10 minutes.
That's
Right.
the, yeah, 10, 12, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say 10 minutes. Now it's a 10-minute drive. They can go there now and they can use the timber for themselves. But also China did regrow it, trying to regrow the timber. Right. So this is how China does business. And even when it comes to contracts, they're not as rigid as Westerners. So Westerners, there's terms and conditions, and those terms and conditions are set in stone. You cannot argue with them. You cannot debate them. Whereas with China, when they pull up the contract, you have to right when you say, okay, look, this conditioner I don't agree with. They're like, okay, you know what? Well, okay, let's revise it. How about we do it like this instead? And you can work with them. They're quite flexible they're very flexible when it comes to stuff like that,
They
right?
did that
And
in Jamaica as well.
mm,
That's what they did in Jamaica and the Caribbean.
yeah,
Some people told me that what they do is they come, they offer double the price, and not only enhance the warehouse, the factory, or the stuff on the land or in the land, but the whole town eats from it as well, and they
yeah,
get
exactly. But
I mean,
also what they do, you,
very.
yeah, but also what they do, Akala, right? He mentioned this as well. Akala, he mentioned this about China. He goes, he went there, and obviously, he does a lot of work, right? He went there, and there's companies. They literally have a Chinese worker with a Jamaican worker, a Chinese manager with a Jamaican manager. So what they're doing, they're passing on skills. They're passing on skills and knowledge. They're actually teaching them. So yeah, they're getting resources, but they're doing it in a much more fair way, right? And
I mean,
that's
you
how
see
you.
there, but there's always some ulterior motive. Did you get me? It's
There's
it's
always
a
some.
it's a man's natural instinct to conquer and dominate. So I don't think they're too nice enough to just pass it on casually. It's
But then
probably
again, what is they don't. They're not the type of people that interfere with other people's business like that. And you go there, like even with the people, that's ingrained into them. They don't interfere in people's business like that. And even on a countrywide level, like China, like put it this way, China and India, like during their history, they're not conquering nations. Like they haven't gone out to conquer. They don't go out to conquer.
the
That's not
ancestors,
their.
yeah, but not them.
Hmm?
I mean, ancestrally, the you talk about the Mughals, right?
No, no, I'm talking about the Chinese.
Oh, sorry, the Chinese. Yeah, no, they. I mean, they had big fights with the Japanese. I was reading something. They had a war for 10 or 20 years, something crazy, bro. And there was the first battle, the second, and the third one, and it lasted for decades, just like the 30-year war that happened here in Europe between the Protestants and the Catholics. So,
Wait, what year was this? Like they had like that region there, China,
so
Korea, and Japan. They've always had that, but they never really been the nation from them that's a conqueror is Japan, right? And they were atrocious. They were the worst. They were the worst ones during World War One and Two. But China itself doesn't really conquer. Like when they had the war like centuries ago with Vietnam, what they did, uh, one of the wars they won, they occupied, but they only occupied it for a very short period of time, and they left. So basically, that was there just to teach them a lesson. That was just to teach them a lesson. So China works like that. They don't believe in expanding beyond their borders in such a manner, right? It's a philosophy. It's like in a way like overstretching. Like you're gonna bring trouble at your doorstep like that. It's a belief they have, and they hold on to these like their philosophies. They hold on to. They may not be as religious as per se, but their philosophies, their morals, their beliefs, they hold on strong to. There's a reason why they've been around for 5,000 years roughly, right? Or it's the only cradle of civilization that's still around. Like for example, like you were talking about rivers earlier, and you mentioned three rivers. Well, there's six cradles of civilization, right? One is Egypt, one is Mesopotamia, around the Tigris and Euphrates. One is the Indus Valley. One is China. One is the Incas and Aztecs. Now, I know the Aztecs. They were built around water because there was where they built that civilization around. That area was a swamp, but then they found out a genius way to filter it, so the water became pure, and they built their civilization on top of that. It was literally like just like how they done it was genius. Uh, the Incas I don't know much about, but uh, what's it? Iraq, Mesopotamia, again built around river, Tigris and Euphrates. What's it? Egypt built around the River Nile. Uh, Indus Valley built around the Indus River, and China built around the Yellow River, right? And out of all those civilizations, China's the only one that's still around. So they have certain philosophy. They have a certain formula that they go by. There's something ingrained into them where they just like it will. It always has been there, and it probably always will be there. It probably always will be there. Like that's the kind of civilization that they are. I put it this way: they survived colonialism, right? Like even India broke into several different countries. The Ottoman Empire broke, uh, and China was robbed. Remember, China was attacked horribly by Japan as well, and they had the 731 experiment. So China was brutalized as well, and they were robbed, and they were in a worse state than India and Pakistan, but they were not colonized, and they made and look at them now. Look at their civilization now. They're still one country, right? And yet, look, they're beating America right now. So that's another thing. Like when you look at China, when you look at my point about unity, like that I made during the start of this podcast, China has that formula.
Seems they've cracked it, but let's see how it pans out, because now, not to go into too much detail, but Trump's recent tariffs on aluminium and China and China and China and all the other stuff.
Yeah,
He's proper on it, but let's see, bro. But wallahi, bro, I love these conversations
yeah,
we have over
but
the
in
years.
regards to the tariffs, like in regards to the tariffs, because you mentioned them, right? It was explained to me, right? Because someone had to explain this to me, because I thought with the tariffs, I thought it's the country that's shipping the products that gets a burden, right? Right, that suffers. But no, it's the population of that country. Like for example, so the tariffs, they're not affecting China, they're affecting the American citizens more than they are China, because the tariffs, like it's after
I
the goods
saw
are
a
shipped.
video where a guy in the street was explaining. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so and that's why I've heard a lot of businesses are affected by that move. So it's affecting theirs. It's affecting their economy more than there's anything. Like that was a dumb rule, because initially I thought tariffs, it affects a shipping country, but no, the goods come into the country, and then when the consumer, right, the domestic consumer of that country, he's buying that shipped product, he pays the tariff. So that's so
I was saying as well, a random guy on the street, you heard a conversation. This YouTuber goes up to people without, what do you think about the tariff? And this guy says, hey, I'm an import exporter. Let me explain it. And he explained it exactly how you mentioned it. And I was surprised to learn that as well. But listen, man, at the end of the day, like you said, capitalism is all greed. And
capitalism is all greed. But here's the thing, right? Capitalism was actually mentioned by an Islamic scholar during the Golden Age. So he was an economist, and he he came up with that theory. But then he said, you know what? There's a limit to this, and it's not viable long term. But what did the West do? They implemented it. But in China also, Because remember, China has a long history. China has a history with paper money, right? And they had the same problem. When it came to they had the same problem. They went through the same problem that we're having now with paper money with inflation, right? So they've been through that experience. They also had the same thing with so like industry, you know, like these oil rigs where they're like those machines that just go up and down like that. They had the
Mm.
same thing except it was made of wood, but it was exactly the same design. So they went through that period in its history as well. So I think China knows that capitalism maxes out eventually, but obviously they had to play the game because this tiny corner of the world had a monopoly on everything. I had a power grip on everything. So China had to play the game, and the Muslim world they know this as well. Like it's in their history.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Smith took a lot of things from Al-Ghazali as well, but I guess we can speak all night about this. But yeah, bro, I think we definitely need to do this again, inshallah, and
Definitely.
we will speak more about these things. It's very engaging and really opens up our, at least it opens up my eyes more to what's going on. So
Likewise, I learned a lot from you as well. Like you're very in depth with you're very well read. You're more in right. You come with all these references. You know the exact names, right? Where I struggle to do that sometimes. I think I'm more of a physical person, right? But uh, but yeah, I try and do my research. I try and learn. I try and be open minded. And
the secret weapon is black seed honey.
black seed honey.
Black seed honey, bro. Detoxified system, heavy metals, microplastics, and really clears your mind because all the toxins in your system, sugar, mucus buildup, and so on and so forth. But yeah, man, inshallah, let's do this again maybe the end of this week, maybe early next week. I mean, we'll plan it. It's not an
The
issue.
whole planet.
Inshallah. So, yeah, man, thank you so much for your time. And
No
inshallah,
problem. You too, man. This is a good podcast.
thank you, bro. Many more to come, inshallah.
Inshallah, man. Inshallah. Hope my knowledge, my whatever experience I have was helpful.
Absolutely, bro.
And and yeah, we'll do this again definitely. Uh, yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm gonna go eat now.
Alaikum
Uh,
salam. Bilhamdulillah, shukra. Enjoy your food. And
Jazakallah
we.
khair.
Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Wa alaikum salam.